Lieutenant Arlen Reyes stared out the viewport at the vast, spiraling structure of Ethereum Loop. The interspecies space station gleamed like a silver ring against the backdrop of stars, its architecture a testament to alien engineering that still made humans gape in awe. 3 months since Earth had been invited to join the Galactic Alliance, and Reyes still couldn't shake the feeling of being the primitive cousin at a family reunion of geniuses. Admiring the view, human? The voice came from behind, melodious yet tinged with condescension. Reyes turned to face a Crixathi, their silver-blue skin rippling with bioluminescent patterns that moved faster than human eyes could track. Just taking it in, Reyes replied evenly. First-time station on the loop. The Crixathi, who had introduced himself as Ambassador Zilith, made a gesture that Reyes had come to recognize as their equivalent of a dismissive smile. You'll find the pace here challenging. We operate at speeds your kind might find overwhelming. Reyes had heard this before. The Alliance species all seemed to share a common perception of humans. Slow, plodding creatures who'd somehow stumbled their way into space travel. I'll manage, Reyes said, straightening the collar of the Earth Union uniform. Dark blue with silver piping, modest compared to the elaborate garments worn by other species. Of course you will, Zilith replied. After all, we've assigned you an appropriate role for your capabilities. Observational duty. Very important. The Crixathi skin flashed in what Reyes now recognized as their version of laughter. Officially, Lieutenant Arlen Reyes was Earth's military liaison to the Alliance. Unofficially, it seemed the Alliance had decided humans weren't ready for much beyond watching. The Crixathi gestured toward the central hub. Kulme. The reaction trials begin soon. Representatives from all Alliance species will demonstrate their neural capacities. You might find it educational to see what real speed looks like. As they walked, or rather as Reyes walked and Zilith seemed to flow beside them, other aliens passed by. The Murnocs with their chrome-embedded flesh, neural pathways visibly synced with the station's AI. The Forlac, multifaceted eyes rapidly shifting as they processed 19 temporal streams simultaneously. All of them casting brief, curious glances at the human, some pitying, others merely dismissive. You humans move like you're stuck in gravity syrup, commented a passing Forlac engineer, not bothering to slow down enough for Reyes to see more than a blur. They arrived at the central arena, a massive, circular chamber designed for interspecies competitions and demonstrations. Today, it was configured for the reaction trials, something Zilith had described as a friendly contest of neural superiority. Representatives from 12 advanced species were preparing, connecting to monitoring equipment, or performing strange pre-competition rituals. Where should I sit? Reyes asked, looking for the human section. Zilith's skin rippled with amusement. Oh, you're not competing. Humans aren't quite qualified for the trials. Your reaction time is measurable in hundreds of milliseconds. The Crixathi champion operates at 1,000th of that. So, I'm just watching, Reyes stated flatly. Observing, Zilith corrected. It's an honor. Most new species wait decades before being invited to witness the trials. Reyes was directed to a viewing platform alongside other observer species, civilizations deemed too neurologically primitive to compete. Among them were the tree-like arbori, whose thought processes spanned minutes instead of milliseconds, and the crystalline quartz mines, brilliant but deliberate thinkers. As the competitions began, Reyes had to admit the displays were extraordinary. A Crixathi champion moved so quickly that the human I simply couldn't track them, appearing to teleport rather than run. Their publicly announced reaction time, 0.001 seconds. Impressive, isn't it? A voice said beside Reyes. It belonged to a reptilian saurian scientist who had introduced himself as Zell. That's Zeril of the Northern Crixathi. He can perceive and react to a photon emission before your visual cortex would even register light entered your eye. That's hard to compete with, Reyes admitted. Your species doesn't need to feel inadequate, Zell said kindly. Evolution takes different paths. Some develop speed, others endurance. Humans, I believe, specialized in What do you call it? Ah, yes, hanging in there. Reyes forced a smile. Something like that. The Murnox demonstration came next. Three sleek figures moving in perfect synchronization, their cyber-augmented brains functioning as a single networked entity. Their movements weren't as blindingly fast as the Krixathi, but they operated with machine-like precision, predicting and responding to complex patterns generated by the arenas. AI. Their showcase involved intercepting random laser pulses using reflective shields. The audience watched through specialized visors that slowed the footage to perceivable speeds. The Murnox didn't miss a single beam, their movements flowing like liquid metal. Neural net processing, Zell explained. They've evolved to share synaptic loads across multiple brains. We calculate their effective computational speed at roughly 100,000 times that of a human brain. Reyes nodded, trying not to let the implications sink in too deeply. Humanity's place in this alliance was beginning to feel less like partnership and more like being kept as an interesting pet. That's when it happened. One of the demonstration robots malfunctioned. Its targeting system scrambled, laser emitter swiveling unpredictably. The safety protocols should have shut it down immediately, but something in its core programming overrode the commands. The robot's laser capacitor charged with a high-pitched whine that cut through the ambient noise of the arena. It swiveled toward the observation decks. Reyes noticed something no one else seemed to. A young Arbori child had wandered away from its parent, standing directly in the path of the malfunctioning robot. The laser sight painted a red dot on the sapling-like child. There was no time to think, no time to call out, no time for anything but action. Reyes moved. Later, the recordings would be analyzed frame by frame, but in the moment, all anyone saw was a blur as the human lieutenant vaulted over the safety barrier, crossed 15 meters of open space, and pulled the Arbori child out of the path of the laser blast, all in the span of approximately 1.8 seconds. The laser fired, hitting the spot where the child had stood just a heartbeat earlier. The robot was quickly subdued by security forces, but the arena had fallen completely silent. Every alien, I was fixed on the human who stood panting, still cradling the trembling Arbori child. How did you? Zilith's voice trailed off, his skin patterns frozen in a state of shock. Reyes handed the child back to its grateful parent, who wrapped protective branches around their offspring. I just moved, Reyes said. What no one mentioned, yet, was what the high-speed cameras had captured. What would soon become known across the Alliance Communications Network as the moment lagless. Reyes had begun moving before the laser had even finished charging, before the targeting system had locked, before there was any visible indication of danger. For the first time since arriving at Ethereum Loop, Lieutenant Arlen Reyes had the full, undivided attention of the Galactic Alliance. Impossible, muttered Zilith, skin flashing patterns of disbelief and confusion. The human moved before the threat was apparent. Across the arena, scientists were already huddled over displays, reviewing the footage, arguing in a dozen different languages. Security footage confirms it, said a Murnox analyst, her voice echoing through the suddenly quiet arena. The human initiated movement 0.73 seconds before the weapon system indicated any targeting shift. How could a species with such slow neural propagation? Another voice began. Reyes stood awkwardly as conversations erupted throughout the arena. The human had just done what felt natural, seen danger and reacted. But to the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, something extraordinary had occurred, something that defied their understanding of human physiology. The Arbori parent approached, extending a flowering branch toward Reyes. You saved my seedling, they said, their slow voice resonating with gratitude. How did you know? Reyes shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. It just didn't feel right. Something was wrong with that robot before it started moving. The strange statement spread through the crowd in whispers and electronic communications, adding to the growing confusion. The reaction trials were abruptly postponed. By the next cycle, the incident had been labeled the moment lagless across Alliance networks. Lieutenant Reyes had become an overnight sensation, the slow human who had somehow acted faster than the galaxy's quickest species. And a question had begun circulating through the scientific community of 12 advanced civilizations. What if everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong? The Alliance Science Council convened an emergency session in the Loop's Central Research Hub. The chamber was designed for collaborative investigation, with holographic displays and quantum computation terminals arranged in concentric circles. Lieutenant Reyes sat uncomfortably in the center, feeling very much like a laboratory specimen. "The footage is unaltered," confirmed the Forlac temporal analyst, her multifaceted eyes shifting rapidly. "We've examined it across 19 probabilistic timelines. The human began movement before the weapons system initiated targeting protocols." Chief Scientist Vex of the Murnox Collective stepped forward, chrome implants gleaming under the chamber's lights. "There must be an explanation. Perhaps the human used some form of temporal technology? Earth has been experimenting with rudimentary chronon manipulation." Reyes shook their head. "I'm not carrying any tech besides standard issue communications and environmental support. You can skin me if you want." "We already have," said a Krixathi scientist, skin patterns shifting in irritation. "Multiple times. No artificial enhancements detected." "Then how do you explain moving before the threat manifested?" asked Zilith, who had joined the investigation out of both professional duty and personal curiosity. Reyes sighed. "I've been trying to tell you. It just felt wrong a moment before it happened. The robot made this. I don't know, this strange sound. Not the charging whine, something before that. A kind of click that didn't belong in the sequence." The scientists exchanged glances, or their species equivalent of the gesture. "Auditory precognition," suggested one. "Pattern recognition, perhaps," offered another. "Impossible." The anomalous sound occurred at a frequency below human auditory perception, countered a third. From the back of the chamber came a new voice, calm, measured, and distinctly interested. "Or perhaps we've been measuring the wrong thing all along." The crowd parted to reveal a tall, slender alien with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. Dr. Salvares was renowned throughout the Alliance as an expert in xenoneurology, the study of nervous systems across species. Dr. Vares acknowledged Zilith with a respectful skin pattern. "You have a theory?" "Not yet," the neuroscientist replied, approaching Reyes with undisguised fascination. "But I find it curious that we've spent decades measuring human neural conduction velocity, processing speed, and muscular response time, all of which are indeed quite slow by our standards, without considering that speed might manifest in entirely different ways." Dr. Vares circled Reyes, studying the human with thoughtful eyes. "Lieutenant, would you say this was the first time you felt something before it happened?" Reyes considered the question carefully. "No, it happens in combat situations sometimes. Pilots call it stick intuition, knowing which way to bank before your instruments tell you to. Some people call it a gut feeling." "Gut feeling," Dr. Vares repeated, as if tasting the phrase. "Your species places intuitive processing in your digestive organs." "It's just an expression," Reyes explained. "It means knowing something without knowing how you know it." The room had gone completely silent. Dr. Vares turned to address the assembled scientists, a new excitement evident in their posture. "What if humans don't react fast, but act before reacting is needed?" The question hung in the air, challenging centuries of established Alliance understanding about neural processing and consciousness itself. "Are you suggesting some form of temporal perception?" asked Zilith, skin flickering with skepticism. "Not exactly," Dr. Vares replied. "I'm suggesting that human consciousness might operate differently than we've assumed. We've been measuring how quickly humans process and respond to stimuli they consciously perceive. But what if their nervous system is capable of processing environmental cues and initiating action before conscious awareness?" "Precognition," someone scoffed. "Preemptive pattern recognition," Dr. Vares corrected. "A form of predictive processing that bypasses conscious thought entirely." The chamber erupted in debate. Some scientists dismissed the theory outright, It contradicted too many established principles of neuroscience. Others began proposing experiments and monitoring protocols to test the hypothesis. Through it all, Reyes sat quietly, wondering how something that felt so natural, so human, could cause such a scientific uproar. Zilith approached, his skin patterns more subdued than Reyes had ever seen them. "If Dr. Vares is correct," he said quietly, "we may have significantly underestimated your species." "We're still slower than you," Reyes pointed out. "Your people really can move at speeds we can't match." "Perhaps," Zilith conceded, "but speed without the ability to anticipate is just motion. If humans can somehow sense what's coming before it arrives." He didn't finish the thought, but his skin pattern spoke volumes about newfound respect. The debate might have continued indefinitely if not for the intervention of Admiral Krev, the Forlac commander of Ethereum Loop's security forces. His multifaceted eyes fixed on Reyes with new interest. "Theories are valuable," the Admiral stated, his voice cutting through the scientific chatter. "Proof is better. If the human truly possesses this anticipatory ability, let it be demonstrated beyond doubt." "What do you propose?" asked Dr. Vares. Admiral Krev's mandibles clicked in what Reyes had learned was a Forlac smile. "The reflex gauntlet." A hush fell over the chamber. Even Zilith's skin patterns froze in shock. "That's excessive," Dr. Vares protested. "The gauntlet is designed to test the limits of our most advanced AI response systems. No biological entity has ever." "Precisely," interrupted the Admiral. "If the human can navigate even a portion of the gauntlet successfully, it would validate your hypothesis more effectively than months of laboratory tests." All eyes turned to Reyes, who shifted uncomfortably. "What exactly is this gauntlet?" "A challenge course," Zilith explained, his patterns betraying concern. "Designed to test reflexes at the quantum response level. It's primarily used for calibrating military AI systems. And if I agree to try it," Admiral Krev's compound eyes gleamed, "then we'll know with certainty whether humans possess something our species have overlooked." Reyes considered the implications. This wasn't just about personal pride anymore. It was about humanity's place in the Alliance, about changing perceptions that could affect Earth's standing for generations. "When do we start?" The reflex gauntlet occupied an entire section of Ethereum Loop's military wing. Originally designed as a training facility for the Alliance's most elite special forces, it had evolved into something few organic beings even attempted. The chamber's walls, floor, and ceiling were lined with thousands of sensors and response emitters. Everything from harmless light beams to more painful deterrents. "The gauntlet operates on an escalating difficulty curve," explained the Murnox technician as she calibrated the system. "Level 1 begins with predictable patterns. By level 10, the system is generating true randomness, with no discernible pattern whatsoever." "What's the highest level anyone's reached?" Reyes asked, stretching muscles that suddenly felt inadequate. The technician's chrome implants flickered. A Krixathi operative once reached level 7 before sustaining minor injuries. An augmented Murnox collective achieved level 8, but required 3 months of recovery afterward. And the current record? A prototype Forlac military AI. Level 9, subsection 3. Reyes swallowed hard. "Right. And what exactly happens when I fail?" "Pain," said Admiral Krev, who had come to witness the test personally. "Not lethal, but certainly unpleasant. The system uses targeted neural stimulation to simulate injury without causing permanent damage." "There's no shame in declining," Dr. Vares added, looking concerned. "This test was designed for beings with reaction times orders of magnitude faster than." "I'll do it," Reyes interrupted. "Just tell me when to start." A transparent barrier descended, separating the observers from the testing area. The chamber's lights dimmed, leaving Reyes standing alone in a grid-marked space that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions, an optical illusion created by the room's design. "The gauntlet begins at your signal, Lieutenant," came the technician's voice over the comm system. "Once initiated, there is no pause function. You may verbally surrender at any point." Reyes took a deep breath, centering themselves the way they'd been taught in Earth Union Special Forces training. Begin. The first level started exactly as described. Predictable patterns of light beams crisscrossing the chamber. Reyes dodged them easily, the movements almost leisurely. Level 1 complete, announced the system. Commencing Level 2. The patterns became more complex, the beams faster. Still manageable. By Level 3, Reyes was breaking a sweat, but maintaining composure. The observers watched in silence as the human moved with increasing urgency, but continued to avoid every beam. Remarkable, murmured Dr. Varis. The human's actual movement speed is still within normal parameters, and yet, look at the anticipation factor, interrupted a Forlax scientist, pointing to a data display. The human is initiating evasive movement an average of 0.42 seconds before beam activation. Level 4 introduced environmental obstacles, floor panels that shifted unpredictably, forcing Reyes to maintain balance while still avoiding the light beams. Getting a little challenging, Reyes called out. Breathing harder now. Level 5 brought the first real difficulty. The beams were replaced with low-power force pulses that stung on contact. Reyes took 2 hits in quick succession, wincing at the sharp pain. Subject has sustained first injuries, noted the system. Continuing to Level 6. They should stop now, said Zilith, skin patterns showing genuine concern. This is already beyond what any human should be capable of. But Reyes pressed on, movements becoming less deliberate and more instinctual. The lieutenant was no longer tracking individual emitters, but moving in a continuous flow, shifting position seemingly at random, yet somehow avoiding most of the increasingly unpredictable pulses. Look at that, whispered Dr. Varis. They're not reacting to the pulses at all anymore. They're anticipating the entire pattern. Level 7 brought gasps from the observers. The system now incorporated gravity fluctuations alongside the force pulses. Reyes stumbled once, took a painful hit to the shoulder, but recovered with a roll that somehow placed them in the only safe spot in the chamber for the next 3 seconds. Impossible, muttered Admiral Krev. The human couldn't possibly calculate that position. They didn't calculate it, Dr. Varis replied, eyes fixed on Reyes. They felt it. Level 8 was where things truly became extraordinary. The system now fired projectiles, soft but painful impact spheres designed to test true, three-dimensional evasion capability. The first volley caught Reyes by surprise, pelting them with 4 rapid hits. The lieutenant grimaced, adjusting to the new threat. And then something changed. Reyes closed their eyes. What are they doing? Demanded Zilith. Eliminating visual processing delay, Dr. Varis whispered in awe. They're relying entirely on whatever this sense is. With eyes closed, Reyes began moving with an almost dance-like quality, stepping, turning, occasionally dropping to the floor or leaping unexpectedly. The projectiles continued firing in truly random patterns now, yet somehow the human avoided 18 consecutive shots. The observers had gone completely silent, many standing to get a better view. Some had activated recording devices. Others were frantically taking notes or updating calculations. Level 9 announced the system, initiating multi-spectrum challenge. Now came the true test. Force pulses, projectiles, gravity shifts, and light beams all operating simultaneously in a chaotic symphony of pain and disorientation. Reyes took several hits in quick succession, stumbling against a suddenly raised floor panel. For a moment, it seemed the gauntlet had finally exceeded human capability. End test, ordered Dr. Varis. This has gone far enough. But before the command could be processed, Reyes did something that would be discussed in Alliance scientific journals for decades to come. The lieutenant jumped, not away from anything, but up and slightly to the left, rotating in midair to land in a crouch facing the opposite direction. In the next moment, 3 separate projectiles fired through the exact space Reyes had occupied, followed by a force pulse that would have hit them squarely in the chest had they remained standing. The chamber fell absolutely silent. On the data displays, the timing was unmistakable. Reyes had moved before any of the weapons had even begun their firing sequence. A soft tone sounded. Level 9, Subsection 1 complete, announced the system. Continuing to Subsection 2. Override, croaked Admiral Krev, his compound eyes wider than anyone had ever seen them. End program. The lights came up. The barriers retracted. Reyes stood in the center of the chamber, bruised, sweating, and breathing hard, but upright and alert. "How the hell did you do that?" demanded the Murnox technician, chrome implants flashing in agitation. That final sequence was true randomness. There was no pattern to predict. Reyes shrugged, wincing at the movement. "You guys overthink it. Just trust the gut." One by one, the observers rose to their feet. Even Admiral Krev straightened to his full height, a four-lac gesture of profound respect. A few bowed their heads in the human's direction. Dr. Vares approached, medical scanner in hand. "Your vital signs are remarkable. Your brain activity during that final sequence showed something I've never seen before. A complete dissociation between perception and action, as if your body was responding to information your conscious mind hadn't even received yet." Reyes accepted a hydration pack from a medical assistant. "Is that good or bad?" "It's revolutionary," replied Dr. Vares. "It suggests a fundamental misunderstanding in how we've been measuring and comparing species capabilities." News of the Gauntlet trial spread through Ethereum loop faster than even Krixathi communication networks could track. By the time Reyes returned to their quarters, messages were already arriving from Earth Union Command, alongside requests for interviews from Alliance media outlets. The next morning, Reyes was summoned to a formal meeting of the Alliance High Council, an honor typically reserved for planetary leaders and distinguished scientists. The council chamber was designed to accommodate all member species, with adaptive seating and environmental controls for 12 different physiological needs. At its center stood a holographic projection system currently displaying the now famous footage of Reyes in the Gauntlet. "Lieutenant Arlen Reyes," began the Forlac High Counselor, "you have demonstrated an ability that challenges our understanding of human physiology. The Science Council has prepared their preliminary findings." Dr. Vares stepped forward, activating a new holographic display showing comparative neural patterns across species. "Our analysis confirms what we suspected," they began. "Humans are not, in fact, faster than other Alliance species in terms of raw neural transmission or muscular response. By those measures, they remain limited." Several council members nodded, as if relieved that the natural order hadn't been completely upended. "However," Dr. Vares continued, "we have identified something extraordinary. Human nervous systems appear capable of what we're calling quantum intuition, the ability to process environmental information and initiate appropriate responses before conscious awareness." "Explain this mechanism," demanded the Krixathi counselor, skin patterns showing skepticism. "We believe it evolved as a survival adaptation," Dr. Vares replied. "Humans evolved as prey animals that later became predators. Their nervous systems developed specialized pathways that bypass conscious thought in threatening situations, essentially allowing the body to respond to danger without waiting for the brain to fully process what it's sensing." "This is not unique," objected a Murnox representative. "Many species have automatic reflexes." "True," Dr. Vares acknowledged. "But human intuition goes beyond simple reflexes. It incorporates pattern recognition, environmental awareness, and something we still don't fully understand, a form of predictive processing that seems to operate outside normal temporal constraints." "Are you suggesting humans can see the future?" asked the Forlac counselor, compound eyes narrowing. "Not exactly," Dr. Vares clarified. "Rather, their nervous systems might be sensitive to quantum probabilities in ways our instruments haven't been designed to detect. They don't consciously perceive future events, but their bodies respond to the most likely outcomes before those outcomes manifest." The chamber erupted in debate. Some counselors dismissed the findings as speculative. Others demanded more rigorous testing. A few expressed concern about the military implications of such an ability. Through it all, Reyes stood quietly, somewhat bemused that something so fundamentally human, so ordinary from their perspective, could cause such an uproar among the galaxy's most advanced species. Finally, the High Chancellor, an ancient quartz mind whose crystalline structure had been accumulating knowledge for over 3 centuries, raised a faceted appendage for silence. Lieutenant Reyes, the Chancellor's harmonic voice resonated. How would you explain your ability in your own words? Reyes thought carefully before answering. On Earth, we have a saying, better to be lucky than good. But what we call luck is often just noticing things, little details, patterns, feelings. Most of the time, we don't even know we're doing it. And in combat situations, pressed Admiral Krev, who had joined the council session. In combat, you don't have time to think, Reyes explained. You just move. The best soldiers aren't necessarily the strongest or fastest. They're the ones who can feel when something's about to go wrong before it does. The Chancellor's crystalline structure glimmered as it processed this information. Then perhaps we have been measuring the wrong attributes all along. Speed is not merely the velocity of response, but the timing of action. In the days that followed, Lieutenant Arlen Reyes became something of a celebrity on Ethereum Loop. The human who had matched, and in some ways exceeded, the capabilities of the Alliance's most advanced species. Earth's standing in the Galactic Alliance was reassessed. Human representatives were invited to join committees previously closed to them. Research collaborations were proposed to study the newly discovered human intuitive response. And Lieutenant Reyes received a new assignment, instructor for a special Alliance training program titled Intuitive Warfare Strategy. I still don't understand why me, Reyes said to Zilith, whose attitude had transformed from condescension to something approaching respect. I'm not special among humans. Most of us have these feelings. That's precisely why, Zilith replied, skin patterns showing sincere interest. You're average, which means what you demonstrated isn't an anomaly. It's a species trait we completely overlooked. In the training center, Reyes faced a class of elite operatives from 12 different species, beings who could think faster, move quicker, and process more information than any human alive. Yet they had gathered to learn something only humans seem to truly understand. So what's your secret? Asked a Forlac commander during one session. How do humans move so unpredictably fast when it matters? Reyes smiled. Because we're not trying to be fast. We're just trying to stay alive. That's the human way. The explanation seemed to frustrate some of the technically minded Alliance species, but others, particularly those with evolutionary histories similar to Earth's, began to understand. As weeks passed, Dr. Vares' research team made further discoveries. Human intuition wasn't limited to danger response. It manifested in social interactions, creative problem-solving, and yes, even games of chance. This last revelation came during an impromptu poker game in the station's recreation area. Reyes had introduced the card game to a group of Alliance officers, explaining the rules with particular emphasis on the bluffing component. I don't understand the purpose, said a Murnox officer, chrome implants gleaming as she examined her cards. The mathematical probabilities are fixed. The optimal strategy should be calculable. That's not really the point of poker, Reyes explained, arranging their own cards. It's about reading your opponents, not just the odds. 6 hands later, Reyes had accumulated a substantial pile of credit chips despite playing against beings who could calculate card probabilities to 6 decimal places. You're using this intuition to determine our holdings, accused Admiral Krev, tossing down his cards in frustration. Reyes shrugged. You all have tells. Little signals that give away when you're bluffing or when you've got a good hand. Impossible, protested the Krixathi diplomat. My species can control our physiological responses at the cellular level. Maybe, Reyes conceded, but you can't control everything. There's always something that gives you away. You just don't know what it is. Later that evening, as Reyes stood at the same viewport where their journey on Ethereum Loop had begun, Dr. Vares joined them. Your demonstration today was illuminating, the xenoneurologist commented. It suggests human intuition extends beyond physical threat response. We call it reading people, Reyes explained. Some humans are better at it than others, but we all do it to some degree. Fascinating, Dr. Vari's mused. A perpetual, unconscious analysis of social cues so subtle that even the beings exhibiting them aren't aware of their existence. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the stars. The Alliance has been measuring capabilities in absolute terms for centuries, Dr. Vari's finally said. Faster, stronger, more intelligent. Always quantifiable, always comparable. But your species has shown us something we overlooked. What's that? That sometimes being precisely right is less valuable than being approximately right at exactly the right moment. Reyes smiled. There's another human saying you might appreciate. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. Indeed, Dr. Vari's agreed. I believe the Alliance has much to learn from humans, Lieutenant Reyes. Your species may be slower than many, but you've mastered something no algorithm has yet achieved. Knowing when to jump before you're consciously aware you need to. As they watched the distant stars, a new understanding seemed to settle between them, representative of a broader shift occurring throughout the Galactic Alliance. The humans, once dismissed as slow and primitive, had revealed that speed wasn't always about how quickly you could move. Sometimes, it was about moving before anyone else knew movement was necessary. In the following months, Alliance scientists would confirm that humans weren't faster than other species in conventional terms. Their neural pathways still conducted signals at the same plodding pace. Their muscles still contracted no more quickly than before. But they possessed something that couldn't be easily measured or replicated, a predictive awareness that operated below the threshold of consciousness. A survival instinct honed over millions of years that allowed them to act not just quickly, but preemptively. Lieutenant Arlen Reyes would go on to train hundreds of Alliance operatives in what became known as human predictive response technique. Many struggled with the concept, particularly those species who had evolved without significant environmental threats. Don't think, Reyes would tell them repeatedly. Feel. Some got it. Others never would. But all came away with a new respect for the species they had once dismissed as simply slow. In the Grand Council chambers, policies were revised. Combat simulations were updated. And a new aphorism began circulating through Alliance diplomatic channels. Beware the humans. They may be slower than you, but they're faster than luck. And throughout it all, Lieutenant Arlen Reyes remained remarkably unchanged, still the same average human who had arrived at Ethereum loop months earlier, still learning to navigate the complex web of interspecies politics, still occasionally baffled by alien customs and physiologies. But now, when Reyes walked the corridors of the station, other species moved aside with newfound respect, not because humans were faster or stronger or smarter than them, but because they had demonstrated something perhaps more valuable in a dangerous universe. The wisdom to know that true speed isn't measured by how quickly you move, but by when you choose to move. And that was something no instrument in the Alliance could quantify.